Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network. We are presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, and we are part of the Believe YouTube podcast network here on this wonderful Tuesday. And if you're watching the stream, you see I have on my Team USA baseball quarter zip. USA, USA, USA. Which we will get to, of course, the World Baseball Classic, the finale tonight, USA versus Venezuela. And I do have some takes on that, which we'll get to, but we got a lot of football to get to. We had I thought was a shocking trade today that I want to get to. And we've got Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft. And there's a really, really good thing as far as the Titans are concerned. If this is what happens in Mel's mock draft, in fact, I think there are two really, really, really good things if this is what happens in Mel's mock draft. But first, we're going to talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, our presenting sponsor. Hiller has been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work that Hiller performs, they'll make it right. I know this because I use Hiller at my home, and they take absolutely great care of me. Professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. And care is their core value. That's right. When they go into your home, they take care of the customer on every job, every time. And again, I know this because I use Hiller at my home. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay. Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft is out at ESPN. And as is the case when the Titans are picking so high, I click on a Mel Kiper mock draft, and I'm like, all right, Mel, let's see. Number one, who are the Titans picking it for? But also, what's the order with which we're using to get there? And so when it came to Mel Kiper's latest mock draft, I think this is a doozy for the Titans. I think the way the board shakes out, it's fine by me, but I don't think this is what they want. So, in Mel's mock draft, he has Fernando Mendoza going number one to the Raiders. David Bailey, the pass rusher out of Texas Tech, going at 2 to the Jets. Arvell Reese, the edge rusher / inside backer from Ohio State, going to Arizona at 3. And that puts the Titans on the clock. And Mel goes with Jeremiyah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame. Now, let me just say this. If they do end up taking Jeremiyah Love with the 4th overall pick, you will see me very happy. It's been a long time since I've been happy with a decision the Titans have made on draft night. And I mean happy. You know, the A.J. Brown trade, I was kind of in shock, and I was kind of trying, okay, well, where do they go from here? Do they take Trevor Penning, the tackle that they need, or do they take Treylon Burks, the receiver that they need? But, I mean, I guess Isaiah Wilson would be the last time that I looked at a pick the Titans made and said, that's a good pick. And before we get all revisionist history, nobody knew, at least I didn't know, that Isaiah Wilson was a total nut job. And Floyd and I, during COVID, had nothing else to do. We watched Isaiah Wilson's tape before they drafted him, and he looked like a big, mean, athletic right tackle. So before you sit there and say, Isaiah Wilson, the player, had real talent. Isaiah Wilson, the person, was a little bit of a bozo. Mel writes at ESPN, quote, "Here is where things get interesting. We haven't seen a running back go in the top 4 since Saquon Barkley at number 2 in 2018. And the Titans certainly have a long list of issues, even after aggressively spending in free agency last week. But Tennessee is committed to boosting the offense around second-year quarterback Cam Ward, and Love would take the run game to another level while also serving as a dynamic pass catcher. His game features 4.36 speed excellent vision, and run you over power and soft hands. Love would be an immediate upgrade over Tony Pollard for new offensive coordinator Brian Daboll. Now, let me just say this. If the Titans find themselves in this scenario, that's exactly what I would do. What Mel Kiper just laid out there, Jeremiyah Love at number 4. That's what I would do. But for some reason, I don't see the Titans doing this. I think this is the doomsday scenario for the Titans because I truly believe the Titans, just look at their defense. Look at their defensive line. John Franklin Myers, he's a DT. Jeffrey Simmons, he's a DT. Jermaine Johnson, he's an edge rusher. So that leaves open one spot for a defensive end in the 4-3 Robert Saleh wants to run. And Jermaine Johnson's a solid player, but that's not going to be the Nick Bosa of this team. I think all signs are pointing to we're going to draft a rookie and we're going to stick him in there. And the reason I think the Titans are not going to take Jeremiyah Love is because I believe the Titans just don't think that Jeremiyah Love has the value for the 4th overall pick. And this is an argument that a lot of people have made. Nick Suss, I love Nick Suss, but Nick Suss is hell-bent on don't take a running back at 4, don't take an inside backer at 4, which generically speaking in a regular draft, I agree. Don't take a running back with the 4th pick and do not take an inside backer. With a 4th pick in a draft, you want to get a starting franchise caliber left tackle. You want to get a starting caliber 10-year all-pro sacker. You want to get Jamar Chase with that pick. But this is not that draft. And according to Spot Track, the Titans have committed $274 million to this year's payroll. Now, this does not include the Ridley pay cut, so it'll be a little bit less. But that still leaves them with somewhere around $30 million in cash to get to the $300 million that we expect them to spend. And I think most of it, if not all of it, will be taken up by the draft class. But did you notice with all that money to spend, the Titans still shied away from the big money guys? Remember, the Titans had interest in Tyler Linderbaum, and then they went to the combine and they said, whoa, no, that price is going to be too expensive for us. To spend on what? A bunch of backup pass rushers? Because that's what they did. They said no thank you to Trey Hendrickson. Even though both Linderbaum and Hendrickson could have been core pieces to build the roster around Cam. And that's one of my biggest issues with the Titans. The Titans are caught up in winning every single deal. They are caught up in this value system in which they say to themselves, well, we have to win every deal, and we have to win it all the time. And I believe you build the best team you can build, hope that that makes you a contender, and hope that building the best team you can build helps develop and nurture Cam Ward. See, something that people don't understand about quarterbacks, and I try to say this all the time and nobody listens, can you tell me a starting quarterback in the NFL that consistently loses, that you would say is a franchise quarterback? Who is a franchise quarterback in this league that is a quarterback of a team that wins 4 or 5 games? They don't exist. Even Joe Burrow, with all the losing Cincinnati's done, they've never bottomed out, and most of the time when they lose, it's when he's hurt. Winning is a part of a quarterback's development. Because when you win the game, whether you win it by 10 points or 1 point or 100 points, everybody's happy on Monday. Everybody in the building is happy. Everybody outside the building is happy. And people start to believe. I watched it with Ryan Tannehill. Again, Ryan Tannehill wasn't going out there with the Titans and putting up 500 yards passing, but they kept winning and winning and winning. Tannehill didn't even throw for 200 yards in a game in which they beat Kansas City. And when they beat Kansas City, people put their hands up and they said, Tannehill, he might be the guy. Winning matters. It matters. And so I want to build the best team and build it around Cam so that Cam doesn't have to do as much to win more games. And then when Cam wins those games, regardless of how much of it's because of how great Cam is or how much of it is because of everybody else, it won't matter. Everybody will be happy. Everybody will have confidence in Cam. And that's what this organization should be trying to do. But then they look at Tyler Linderbaum and they say, it's too expensive for us. We have to go spend our money on a bunch of day one corners. By the way, I saw the Seattle Seahawks today sign Noah Igbenogany. I said, wait till Friday. Sign two of these guys, McCreary and Igbenogany and Cater Kohu, and sign these guys. Their prices will go down significantly. No. We got to pay Cordell Flott all that money. I do think Jeremiyah Love helps Cam Ward's development. And I do think Jeremiyah Love makes you a more competitive football team today. Yes, he is a running back. And I do understand that traditionally running backs don't have the value they used to. But this draft class, we got to call it how it is. It stinks at the top. There are very solid players in this draft, just like there are solid players in every draft. But when it comes to the elite blue chip talent, there's not a lot of that in this year's class. Again, the Joey Bosa's, the Jalen Ramseys, the Ronnie Stanleys, the Laramie Tunsils. All those guys were in the same draft along with Ezekiel Elliott. It was a great draft. The year before, Todd Gurley was probably the best talent in that year's draft. So while I would say, hey, be very, very careful taking a running back with the 4th overall pick, or be very, very careful taking an inside backer, in this case, Sonny Styles. In this draft class, I say go for it. Go get the best player. Go get the guy. If you think Jeremiyah Love is a home run hitter, go get him. Because, again, it's not like you're going to pick him over Jamar Chase, or you're going to pick him over Penei Sewell, or you're going to pick him over Micah Parsons. You're picking him over a defensive end with short arms. And there's a big difference. And yet I just don't think they'll do it. I think the Titans will talk themselves out of Jeremiyah Love. And I think they'll talk themselves in this particular scenario where Mendoza goes 1, Bailey goes 2, Reese goes 3, which is Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft. I think they'll take Rueben Bain because they'll say to themselves, yes, Rueben Bain doesn't have the measurables, but Rueben Bain is a defensive end. He's a pass rusher, and we'll stick him there even though he doesn't have those measurables. Now, I think Rueben Bain is a DT in a 4-3 scheme, and I think he would go nice next to Simmons. The problem is you just paid John Franklin Myers $21 million to go next to Simmons. And the other thing is, when it comes to this exact scenario, Mendoza, Bailey, and Reese, it does feel like after free agency, the head coach has a huge influence on the personnel. And if the head coach gets a say in this, and it's an offensive player or a defensive player, I mean, this is the head coach that used to lose games with Zach Wilson as his quarterback and go up to the podium and say, well, the defense played well. Translation, I did my job. My unit played well. So you think he's going to look at Mike Borgonzi and you think he's going to say, I'd rather like the offensive player? I doubt it. And this takes me back to something John Elway said on Shannon Sharp's podcast, that there are certain things that I hear that stand out to me that for some reason for other people, it just doesn't move the needle. You hear it and then you forget about it and you, whatever it may be. And that is John Elway telling Shannon Sharp that in 2018, when he was running the Denver Broncos and they had the 4th overall pick, he wanted to draft Josh Allen. And he got talked out of it by Vance Joseph. Vance Joseph's a defensive coach. The defensive coach said, no, we need Bradley Chubb. And not that Bradley Chubb was a bum, just like Rueben Bain is not a bum. But I can see the defensive coach saying, no, I'd rather have Bradley Chubb. So if Mel Kiper's mock draft is what happens on draft night, and it's Mendoza, Bailey, and Reese, and the Titans are back on the clock with the 4th overall pick in the draft, I will be sitting there with bated breath thinking, Jeremiyah Love. And I'll be okay with Sonny Styles. And you know how I do it? I do not do pick tipping. You know, it goes back to that J.C. Latham draft in 2024 when I turned my phone over and I said, okay, no tip picking. I'm going to hear it in the headset from Goodell. And I heard it that the Chargers were taking Joe Alt. Oh, no. And then they took J.C. Latham at 7. And before the pick, I was like, Bowers or Adunze. But Bowers. And the pick came in. And I had a former NFL head coach text me who said, take the tight end. He's going to the Hall of Fame. And, of course, they took J.C. Latham, and I lost it. If that exact moment comes up, I'll be sitting there saying, Jeremiyah Love. And then I'll hear Goodell, and I think he'll say Rueben Bain. And I just think the Titans will talk themselves out of drafting the running back 4th overall because it's a running back, even though this draft kind of stinks at the very top. And I think that this is the doomsday scenario for that front office. I think they can live with Reese or Bailey because those guys are true edge rushers, even in a 4-3. I don't know if they feel that way about Rueben Bain. And I know Robert Saleh went to the combine and he said good things about Rueben Bain, but if we're being honest, I just can't take a guy with short arms that high. It's going to turn into Will Campbell. And yet, I think that's what's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they let Twitter make the pick for them because Twitter loves Jeremiyah Love, and I want Jeremiyah Love too. But I'm telling you, the Titans' lack of aggressiveness at edge in free agency makes me think they're going to take one of those 3 at the top of the draft because knowing Mendoza goes at number 1 and the draft really starts at number 2, they know one of those 3 guys, by simple mathematics, is going to be available to them with the 4th overall pick. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be either Bain, Bailey, or Reese. And in Mel's draft, Bailey goes at 2, Reese goes at 3, which leaves the Titans with only one choice, Bain at number 4. Number 2, on the Mel Kiper mock draft. So when I went to the Mel Kiper mock draft, I went through the whole thing. And then I went to PFF this morning and I put in every single pick for Mel's draft because I wanted to know just off the top, who were the top players available going into day 2? Because as much as we can talk about the 4th overall pick, we need to acknowledge the Titans have a really important pick at the beginning of day 2 at pick number 35. And so Mel's mock draft led this group of players to be the top players available entering day 2. Again, this is Mel Kiper's mock draft. The top players, and these are according to PFF's draft rankings. Number 1, Akeem Mesidor, the defensive end out of Miami. Number 2, Omar Cooper Jr., the wide receiver out of Indiana. Number 3, Cassius Howell, the defensive end at Texas A&M. Number 4, TJ Parker, the defensive end at Clemson. And number 5, Denzel Boston, the wide receiver at Washington. Now, I want you to think about this for a second because this is Mel's mock draft, and Mel does have the Titans taking Jeremiyah Love. And so if they take Jeremiyah Love, they get the second day. Again, I don't think they're going to take Jeremiyah Love, but if they take Jeremiyah Love, they get there on the second day, and Mel's draft has The top 5 players available: defensive end, wide receiver, defensive end, wide receiver. And then McDonald, the big nose tackle out of Ohio State's also available. Isn't that a dream scenario for the Titans picking at 35? You don't pick a receiver, you don't pick an edge rusher, but you do get the best player on the board perhaps in Jeremiyah Love. And then on day 2, Akeem Mesidor, a big-time sacker who I think is probably more the prototype as far as the 4-3 defensive end is concerned than Rueben Bain, is standing there on the board. And so I saw those 5 names, and I thought, that's perfect. And then I texted TD, and I said to TD, I go, okay, TD, because you know TD knows these guys better than I do. I said, TD, if these are the guys entering Friday night, so you draft Jeremiyah Love, and these are the 5 guys, what do you think? And TD says all 5 of those guys he would categorize as part of the 40 first-round picks that are available in this year's draft. TD also says that Cassius Howell has been one of his favorite pass rushers all year. He just did not blow up the combine, and he says he's been all over Easton Freeze about Omar Cooper Jr. all year. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, wow. Like, that could be perfect for the Titans. And so then I said, all right, well, let's just practice this out. Let's just, again, maybe we'll try to knock this down a little bit more. So the Jets are at the top of round 2. It's weird because all these teams have the same record. It's kind of like last year where you pick number 1, but then you also pick 35 and not 33. So the Jets need a wide receiver. They pick at 33. So I assume they'll take Omar Cooper Jr., whom I love. And that's with the assumption, I believe in Mel's mock, that they take David Bailey and Ty Simpson in the first round. So they'll take Omar Cooper Jr. Then Arizona is on the clock. Arizona needs everything. Arizona could take anything. And my guess is people are probably going to try to jump you, and they're going to try to trade with Arizona. And when I did this morning, the team that wanted to trade for the pick and was willing to give up the most in order to get it was Miami, which I don't think will happen, but maybe. And Miami traded a 2 and a 3 to move up to take a wide receiver, so they took Denzel Boston. And I think Miami, after today, trading Jaylen Waddle, probably needs a wide receiver more than they would going into the day. So let's just say that's what happens. So Cooper and Boston are off the board. That leaves the Titans with Akeem Mesidor, Cassius Howell, TJ Parker. I think that's a win-win-win. So if you're on the clock at 35, and now you're sitting there and those 3 edge rushers, who do you take? Now, I'm fine with any of these 3 guys. Mesidor, in my mock draft 1.0, I have going off the board at 12 to Dallas, because I think a sacker, and I know he's a little bit older, but I know a sacker, in my opinion, with the talent of Mesidor, is going to go high. I'd be shocked if Mesidor makes it out of round 1, but there he is. But again, I'm okay with all 3 guys. And I guess the point I want to make is not, okay, they need to take Mesidor. Okay, they need to take TJ Parker, Cassius Howell. Because again, TD says he's like Cassius Howell all year. Cassius Howell just didn't have a huge combine. And TD says that all 5 of those guys available would categorize as the 41st round picks. The point I want to make here is don't trade that pick if that's what the board looks like. But I don't want to live in absolutes. So in order to make that trade, in order to say, okay, I'm going to trade out of one of these guys that are all available. Again, these are the top players according to PFF that would be available to begin round 2. You pick 3rd in round 2. If those guys are available, you would have to knock my freaking socks off in order to get that pick from me. Last year, I think the Titans were desperate to create draft capital. That's why they made the deal with Seattle, where they traded 35 away, which became Nick Emanwari. Oh, God, it could have been Nick Emanwari. They traded away the pick for Nick Emanwari in order to draft in the second round and take Oladejo and subsequently Kevin Winston. I'm not doing that. Not this year. In order to trade 35, given what it looks like is going to be at the top of the board, and I think TD said this the best when he said 40 first-round picks, which means it's not a great year for blue-chip talent, but it is a good year for overall talent at the top. I think I would need a second this year and a second next year in order to move off of 35. Or I need a player just to fill a hole, and then I need a first. And before you say, that's crazy that some team would call up at 35 and offer you an average starting player and a first. Remember this. Last year, Atlanta traded away a first. They traded away a first and a second to get back into the first in order to take James Pierce. And that general manager was clearly on the hot seat because he got fired at the end of the draft, or at the end of the season. So he was trying to win right away. I think there's probably going to be a general manager out there or a head coach or somebody. There's going to be an organization that falls in love with a player. And that organization is going to say, oh, my God, if Omar Cooper is there, we'll trade a first next year in order to make it happen. And I would take that. Because the one thing I tell people, when it goes to the idea of taking first rounders in the future, you have no idea who's going to be good next year or not. Yeah, we think Buffalo and Baltimore and Denver are all going to be good, but we don't know that. And so when it comes to future first round picks, I've seen teams trade picks in the future and they think, oh yeah, we're going to be good. And then all of a sudden, because the Denver Broncos with Russell Wilson are not good, Seattle's picking at number 5 in the draft. Or because the LA Rams are not good the year after they won the Super Bowl, the Detroit Lions are picking up towards the top. So I'm not making this trade back that they made last year, where they traded from 35, the Eman Wari pick. They traded from 35, and they moved back to the later part of the second round, and they picked up a third. They did that because they woke up that morning and they said, we're going to create draft capital. That was not even a trade chart win. That was a trade chart draw for those two picks. And the trade chart usually, in order to be the team that is acquiring a pick, is usually a team blows you out of the water. If those are the guys that are available at 35, don't call my phone. Edge rushers and receivers that could easily go in the first round, take them. Do not trade back. It's not worth the extra third. It's not worth. You better get your panties blown off in order to move off of pick number 35. If Mel Kiper's mock is right, and that's what it looks like entering day 2. So that's the second thing. The third thing today is the Jaylen Waddle trade. And I saw this morning and I was like, holy crap. And my holy crap didn't come from, oh my God, can you believe the Dolphins traded Jaylen Waddle? Or, oh my God, can you believe the Broncos acquired him? Because yes, I can believe that the Dolphins would completely tear it down and try to tank. They've already done this before within the last 10 years. And the owner of the Dolphins is the only guy, I think, in the history of the NFL who's ever been suspended for purposely losing games that weren't gambling related. I mean, he has tried to tank. It is a common known fact. And so when the Dolphins got rid of everybody the week before free agency, Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, then they would later get rid of Minka Fitzpatrick, I'm like, they're tanking. And then they signed Malik Willis. And I sat there and I said, wait a minute. Why would they sign Malik Willis? If they were trying to win games in 2026, I could see why they would sign Malik Willis, though I wouldn't sign Malik Willis to win games. But I didn't think they were trying to win games. They traded everybody away. They cut everybody. Well, no, now they're going to try to win. And okay, well, they've got Jaylen Waddle and they've got Devon Achane. And So maybe they'll win some games with Malik. Again, I don't think they will, but I guess this isn't the full-on tank job. Nope. Next week, goodbye Jaylen Waddle. In exchange for 31, and then I think they got a couple other picks in there as well. Congratulations to Jaylen Waddle. He got a get-out-of-jail-free card from the Miami Dolphins, and he gets to go to the Denver Broncos, where they're going to be competing for a Super Bowl. And I think Waddle and Sutton is a good 1-2 punch in Denver for Bo Nix. Sean Payton, I think, looked at it and said, I could run the risk of waiting until 31 or whatever it is. I could run the risk of waiting, or I could just go ahead and get the guy now who's ready to go. And so I guess, I get it. I understand why the Dolphins made the move. They're clearly in a full-on tank. Got it. To me, that means Devon Achane should be out there for anybody who'd be interested in getting a running back. If you can't get Jeremiyah Love and Breece Hall ends up signing a deal with the Jets, Devon Achane might actually be out there, and you can go make a move to go get him. There's no doubt in my mind Devon Achane's available. But why did they sign Malik Willis? The Dolphins were in the perfect spot. If you wanted to truly tank, the Dolphins were in the perfect spot. Just play Quinn Ewers at quarterback, and then you're done. Trade away Waddle, trade away Achane, play Ewers at quarterback. You're going to go 1-16, and you're done. I just don't get it. I do not understand. I understand everything the Dolphins have done, except for signing Malik. And if they signed Malik and they said, no, we're going to try to quickly fix this thing with Waddle and Achane as part of the solution, then I'd get that. But why sign Malik and then get rid of Jaylen Waddle and have no good receivers on the roster? That doesn't make any sense to me. So I was a little surprised by that. Again, I think this is a bet from Sean Payton where he's saying, I think Jaylen Waddle is better than Casey Concepcion, Omar Cooper Jr., the receivers that Denzel Boston that may be available at the end of the first round. The move makes sense for me with Denver. They've got deep-pocketed owners who love to spend. Sean Payton wants to win right now. They're probably convinced they're in their Super Bowl window, which they may or may not be. I don't know. I don't know if you can win it with Bo Nix. But again, I get the trade from Denver's perspective. From the Dolphins, I get it. If you didn't just sign Malik. But man, that was a surprising trade today just after they signed Malik Willis. And then there was another move today, and this one doesn't really affect the Titans, but boy, did it send Titan fans into a tizzy. So Wyatt Teller, the Pro Bowl guard of the Cleveland Browns, has signed a 2-year contract with the Houston Texans. And as soon as Wyatt Teller went off the board, because he is a right guard, and the Titans right now don't have a right guard, Titans Twitter started to freak out. Even TDG said earlier this week that he's getting worried about center and right guard. And I understand. I'm just going to tell you this right now. I believe the Titans already have their starting center. I believe last week when they signed Austin Schlottman to a 2-year contract worth up to $9 million, I believe they plan on him being the starting center. I believe they had all these veteran options, whether it was Linderbaum, who was too expensive, McGovern, who re-signed with the Bills, Biotish, who signed with the Chargers, whomever. And then they looked at everybody else, and they said, we think all these guys are the same. Whether it's Corey Levin, whether it's Cade Mays, whether it's Luke Fortner, whether it's Lloyd Cushenberry, they looked at them and said they're all the same. So which one of these guys that are all the same, Brian Dable, do you want? And I think Brian Dable said Austin Schlottman. So today, Easton Freeze put out there, who's going to be the starting center and who's going to be the right guard. And I said to him, I go, Schlottman's going to be the center. And he replied back and he said, even if that is the case, how would you feel comfortable with that? I'm not saying I feel comfortable. I am not endorsing this decision. I said go pay $27 million for Linderbaum because I think if you've got all that money, then just go ahead and do it. But no, I think they're going with a guy Dable trusts, and they'll say, you know what? We had to skimp somewhere, and that's where we're skimping. And I truly believe that with Zeitler, if the money was right, he'd be re-signed. I think it was PK reported Zeitler's coming back to the NFL, but that he and the Titans are working through it. And what that tells me is they can't agree on the money. The term they can agree on, it's going to be a one-year deal. They can't agree on the money. And so I don't know what they're going to do. At right guard, perhaps it'll be Cordell Volson, who got hurt last year. There's talk about Jackson Slater, who was drafted, I think, in the 5th round or 6th round last year. Perhaps Jackson Slater could go in there, and it would not surprise me because it does look like Mike Borgonzi has MGS, which is called my guy syndrome. My guy, my team, my pick, my quarterback, my guy. And, Mike Borgonzi would not be the first guy in the NFL nor the last guy in the NFL to get MGS. Mike Vrabel, I think we all know, is just rabid when it comes to MGS. But it does look like Mike Borgonzi, with his draft class last year, is prepared to put those guys into starting positions when there are humongous question marks about pretty much all of them. With the exception of Ward and DK, I think there are serious questions about putting Gunnar Hellman as a starting tight end in the NFL. Just like I think there are serious questions about relying on Kevin Winston to be a starting safety, given the fact that Kevin Winston's been hurt each of the last 2 years. So who's going to play right guard? I don't know. And I've told you who's going to play center. It's going to be Austin Schlottman. And Carmen Brasillo, who a lot of people that like the Giants consider him to be a guru, my guess is he and Brian Dable have convinced the front office that, hey, Austin Schlottman played for us in New York, and he can be our starting center. And Carmen Brasillo and Brian Dable, they're becoming the new Bill Callahan. Because if the Titans signed Austin Schlottman to a deal 2 years ago, because he played for Bill Callahan for a handful of games, and Bill Callahan said he could be the starting center, you people would all sit there and say, Bill Callahan says he can coach him. And I think that's what's happening here. Do I think it'll work? Of course I don't. But, I guess it could. But if you want me to predict for you what's going to happen, I'm telling you what's going to happen. They're going to try to re-sign Zeitler. If they can't re-sign Zeitler, then they'll say there's going to be a competition at right guard in training camp between Cordell Volson and Jackson Slater. And because they suffer from my guy syndrome like everybody else, they'll probably give the job to Jackson Slater, even if Jackson Slater's not any good. Because he's my guy. I drafted him. I think he can play, so stick him in there. One person said Bill Callahan seemed like uber hype. Almost seemed like blocking was even worse with Bill Callahan. Look, when they hired Bill Callahan, I was all for it because of the reputation that Bill Callahan had. When they completely neglected right tackle, and I knew this was going to happen when they went to the combine, and Brian Callahan said to Caroline that he felt like Jalen Duncan and Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, when he said that he thought that PT or Duncan could play right tackle, I said, oh, my God. Oh, no. And I'm like, those are coaches thinking, I can coach him, which, of course, they thought they could. They could not. And then when they drafted J.C. Latham and they said they were going to put him at left tackle, and Diana Rossini came out immediately and was like, this was Bill Callahan's favorite player in the draft. I went from, hey, Bill Callahan is respected. Bill Callahan's a good line coach. Bill Callahan will help scout and help know what, help the organization find what they're looking for. I went from that to Bill Callahan is not a general manager. Bill Callahan has never been a general manager. Bill Callahan is never going to be a general manager. Bill Callahan was a head coach in the NFL, was fired after 2 years. You know, let Bill Callahan run the team? And that is basically what happened. And so it does feel like there's a little bit of this with Carmen Brasillo and Brian Dable of saying, hey, if you think Austin Schlottman can do it, then Austin Schlottman's our guy. To which I'd say, I'd rather go pay for Tyler Linderbaum. I'd rather go pay that. I love the idea that the Titans, who have no money to spend on good players, I mean, they've got Simmons, and they're going to give Skoronski a contract, and Skoronski is a guard who is under contractual control for the next 2 years. And that's before you even talk about franchise tagging him. But, I mean, they have no good players, so they could pay anybody they want to in free agency. And the Titans are like, oh, no, Linderbaum, that's too much money for us. We got too much money. We've got to go spend on Cordell Flott and Daniel Bellinger, which is, again, don't even get me started. And when I've seen the way the corner market is played out, it takes me back to Monday. Because I said, when it came to corners, I was like, just wait till Friday. Just get yourself 3 corners. I'm not saying that you just completely leave it bare, but just wait until Friday and go sign veteran guys on 1-year deal, $5 million, $3 million, whatever. Just go do that. And they jumped out immediately on Monday and signed corners. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I do that. And then on Friday, McCreary signs with the Lions. And today, Igbenogany signs with the Seahawks. And Kobe Durant signed at the end of last week for $5 million with the Cowboys. And I was like, oh, shit. Oh, God. You could have gotten 3 of those guys for the cost of 1 Cordell Flott. Like, Cordell Flott better be fucking good if that's the way they're going to do that. TDG says, we are in the window before we have to pay Cam. We have to build the team, Jared. I mean, are they building the team? Cordell Flott. They're winging it at center and right guard. I would say build the team with Tyler Linderbaum. Then again, Linderbaum got such a good deal. Like, as much as I can say go match the Raider contract, it's a 3-year deal and they can't tag him. So, I mean, it's a great deal. You got to give them that. It's a great deal. How do I feel about right guard center? I feel terrible. I legitimately feel absolutely terrible about what they're going to do there, but it's going to be Austin Schlottman. Okay, I do want to talk about these 2 topics, and then we'll get to your reaction. The first is, I want to talk about Vanderbilt for a second. So I said yesterday on the program, I brought up the fact that Vanderbilt is absolutely embarrassing Tennessee. They're better than Tennessee at football. They're better at men's basketball. They're better at women's basketball. And last year they were better at baseball. And I don't know if they'll be better at baseball when they play this year. And you can break down RPIs or finishes. I'm just talking about head-to-head. Vanderbilt has been the better team over the last year in football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and baseball. And Vanderbilt has been good in all of those. Multiple appearances on College Game Day this year in football. They're in the SEC title game in men's basketball, and they're back in the NCAA tournament. They've got a top 2 seed in the women's tournament. They're doing all the right things. And I want to take some time to commend Vanderbilt Athletic Director Candace Lee, because I don't know how many people look at the job that Candace Lee has done and give it the proper salute. Vanderbilt's women's team is a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Candace Lee hired Coach Shea Ralph. Vanderbilt's men's basketball team is back in the NCAA tournament. They just played for the SEC title. And Candace Lee hired Coach Mark Byington. Vanderbilt's football team was on College game day twice this year. They've been to bowl games in each of the last 2 years. She hired the head coach, Clark Lee, and I think courageously stood by him after a 2-10 2023 season. I cannot tell you how much respect I have for Candace Lee and the job that Candace Lee has done. And on top of that, Candace Lee is a great person. I'm going to tell you a story. And I had to check with my friend Ryan Littman, who's a Vanderbilt Hall of Famer. He's a tennis player. I had to check with him to see if I could tell this story before I decided to tell it, but I'm going to tell it. So Ryan Littman was an All-American at Vanderbilt in the mid-2000s. I want to say he graduated around 2012, 2013, something like that. He's like my age. And so he graduated sometime around there. He's one of the best tennis players in the country. And Ryan Littman decided to be a tennis coach. And so he went to Auburn, and he was an assistant coach there. And after a season or two at Auburn, he gets hired at Vanderbilt under the head coach who was the head coach for forever at Vanderbilt, who was his head coach at Vanderbilt. And the head coach at Vanderbilt for the tennis team really wanted Ryan Littman to be his successor, to be the heir apparent. So here's Vanderbilt tennis. Again, not a premier program. If Vanderbilt tennis wins or loses, nobody cares anyways. But here's a guy who's a local guy who's from Nashville, who chose to go to Vanderbilt, who was an All-American, who's the associate head coach of the program, and Candace Lee didn't hire him. And he was devastated. That was his dream job. In fact, when he was an athlete, he had a relationship with Candace Lee, who was the SWA at the time and worked in compliance at the time. He had a relationship with her then. And he was devastated. And he told me Candace Lee went to dinner with him after she chose not to hire him. And she sat down with him and she laid out the reason she made the decision she made. You think that's a fun conversation to have? You've known somebody for 10 years. They sweat and they bled and they left it all on the court for your university. You have the opportunity to hire them to be the head coach, and you don't do it because you think somebody else is a better choice. And then you sit down with that person and you explain it. And Ryan Littman told me, he said he walked away from that meeting with Candace Lee and he had more respect for her after that meeting than he did before that. That's who's running Vanderbilt. And I'd say running them to the top. She's awesome. Those are the organizations that have successful leaders because they bring something to the table. And for Candace Lee, she's insightful, she's decisive, she commands respect, but she's also accountable and she's honest. And that's why Vanderbilt is where they are today. And in my opinion, Candace Lee should be the athletic director of the year across the entire country. I mean, I would think about Indiana, but outside of football, Indiana stinks at everything. They stink at basketball. I don't even know. I don't think they're any good at women's basketball. So can't give it to the Indiana AD. The one school that's really got it going on, and it's come out of it's Vanderbilt. And while some people will say, well, Vanderbilt has always had the money, Vanderbilt is now just spending the money, to which I would say Candace Lee made promises that Vanderbilt did not have a reputation for. Promises about facilities, promises about NIL. And you can't tell me she hasn't met them. Look at the football stadium. Look at the basketball facility that they've built. And they're not done over there. And look at the product on the field and the players they're recruiting. So I just want everybody to know that when it comes to Vanderbilt and their success and the fact that they are beating Tennessee across the board, it starts with Candace Lee. And Chancellor Dearmeyer is a big part of that too, because when he took the job, he said sports were a big deal. But to me, it's Candace Lee. And I'm a big believer in people getting credit when they deserve it. And I look at the football program, and I have a great deal of respect for Clark, and you people know that. And I look at the basketball program and the women's basketball program. Candace hired Shea Ralph. I wanted her to hire Steph Norman, who had basically a similar resume to that of Shea Ralph. Steph Norman was an assistant coach at Louisville when I was there. She was an assistant coach at Vandy when Candace played on the team, and Candace chose Shea Ralph, and it's worked out well. Again, she doesn't make the popular hire. She makes the best hire, and that's how you end up with Mark Byington. So I just have to give my flowers to Vanderbilt and specifically to Candace Lee. And the fact that Vanderbilt is now, I feel bad for Vandy because I feel like in both the men's basketball committee and the football committee, they still look at them as little old Vanderbilt, but that's going to change soon enough. Because I think Vanderbilt will be competitive next year in football. And I don't know how after 2 years of Mark Byington, you can think that Vanderbilt's going to be anything but competitive in men's basketball. So I congratulate Candace Lee. TDG says she needs a statue for what she's done there. I mean, a statue is a big deal. But I absolutely think Candace Lee deserves all the credit. And then finally tonight, the World Baseball Classic Championship. I am not a first four guy. Now, I am kind of interested in Miami of Ohio, SMU tomorrow, but I'm just not a first four guy. A lot of people out there are. I'm not. The World Baseball Classic, I will be watching. USA. Now, I watched USA Canada, and I watched USA the other night. And, I mean, it's great baseball. It's so intense. Team USA has really put real stars out there. The other teams have real stars. It's fun to watch. But I got a couple of thoughts here. This game tonight, 7 o'clock on Fox, I mean, it is going to be raucous. I don't think the atmosphere will feel like a baseball game. I think the atmosphere will feel like a high-level European soccer match or a World Cup soccer match or an Olympics-type match. And Venezuela, they got studs. Ronald Acuna Jr., Eugenio Suarez, Wilber Abreu, William Contreras. You know, my dad, I remember the 1995 All-Star game, and Lenny Dykstra led off. He was playing for the Phillies at the time for the National League, and of course, we're big Braves fans. And my dad said to me, he goes, the All-Star game is the only night that we root for the Phillies. And so tonight is the only night that I'm rooting against Ronald Acuna because I'm rooting for Team USA. And yet the one thing I can't get over is the fact that the starting pitcher for Team USA is going to be Nolan McLean. Who? Nolan McLean is a rookie who made 8 starts last year. Now, he was very good in those 8 starts for the New York Mets. But shouldn't Tariq Skubal be pitching this game? And that's what's wrong with the WBC. The WBC is played this time of year because that's when they can get it in with the understanding that guys are still ramping their bodies up for the regular season. Well, we don't need to do that in the future anymore. Times are changing. Things are not the way they used to be. The idea that the baseball all-star game carries the same juice that it had when Pete Rose ran over Ray Fosse is just downright laughable. Major League Baseball's TV contracts on the national scale are up after the 2028 season, and they plan to cash in the same way the NBA cashed in last year. And that means streamers will be involved and multiple networks, and I highly doubt that Fox will have the World Series the way Fox has had the World Series every single year this century. But one thing I would say is, why not work the World Baseball Classic into that? Every 2 years, let's play the Olympics and let's let the big leaguers go and take a 2-week break. And let's play the World Baseball Classic and take a 2-week break. And I suggested that on Twitter, and people said, no, you can't take off 2 weeks and get rid of the All-Star game. To which I would say, why not? Why can't we just start with the best of 16? And for 2 weeks, we play, knockout round style baseball, and we build it up to the World Baseball Classic Championship in the middle of the season when guys are ready to pitch 6 or 7 innings and don't have to come out after 92 pitches, and let's play for our countries. Everybody's already in the United States then anyways. So what's wrong with my WBC idea? The way I would look at it is I would say, okay, we play through, and I'm looking at 2030 because that's obviously 4 years from now and in the new TV contracts. But we play through July 4th, and then the Wednesday after July 4th, which I believe is July 8th, we break. And we take the 16 teams in the World Baseball Classic, and we go NCAA tournament style across all the different channels. And it's one game, win or go home. Then 2 days later, play the round of 8. Then we play the Final 4. Then we get a best 2 out of 3 at the end of the second week for the World Championship for the WBC. And we can do that where we play a best 2 out of 3, and we can have the home run derby right in there the day before. And we can play at different stadiums so that the fans, again, the owners are going to hate losing ticket prices, but hey, you're going to get these WBC games. That's what we should do. And in order to do it, you'd have to admit, Major League Baseball would have to admit the All-Star game kind of sucks now. They'd have to admit that they're embracing the international play, the way hockey has, the way basketball kind of is. They'd have to go with the flow. And for the old fuddies that take their teeth out to watch first pitch at 7:05, that would be very difficult for them. But the game is going in such a different direction. Bob Nightingale told me. He is the lead insider for USA Today for baseball. Bob Nightingale told me that when the 2 new teams are added around 2030, 2031, with the expectation being that Rob Manfred will announce him on his way out in 2029, the expectation is Salt Lake City is a slam dunk. Nashville is the leader in the clubhouse to be the Eastern team that gets added. Now, I keep going back to there's going to have to be a compromise here because the idea of Major League Baseball getting the city to build them a stadium downtown is not going to happen. So you're going to either have to have an owner who's got huge pockets, who's willing to build out their own stadium, or you're going to have to take it to another county. But again, that's a different discussion for a different day. The only issue that I heard when I was talking to Nightingale, he said by then they may get rid of the American and National Leagues. And I'm like, no. I want to be in the American League East because I want the Yankees coming to town. I want the Red Sox coming to town. I want the big brands coming to town on a consistent basis. But again, it sounds like, to a certain extent, baseball has done a good job over the last 5-6 years of embracing changes that have made the game better. And I think doing this to the WBC would make baseball better. So that's my suggestion. This is great, but let's play it in the middle of the year in 2030, and let's let the big leaguers play and no restrictions on pitching, and Tariq Skubal can go and everything else. And so with that, let's get to some of your reaction so far today on the program. One person says that, Jared, you said there was no chance the Titans would take Love after Robinson took number 4. Don't tease us like this. I don't know. What does that mean? One person says, yes, draft Bailey so we can lose 6-3 every week. I mean, let me tell you this. If your defense gave up 6 points a game, I would feel very comfortable that you could win. Even with DK, Ridley, Wan'Dale Robinson, an overpaid tight end from the Giants, Gunnar Helm, who we're unsure about, I think you could have a pretty good team. So I would be very careful on saying like, oh, defense doesn't help. Defense absolutely helps you win. I think if Bailey's there, they'll take him. I think if Reese is there, they'll take him. And Mel's mock draft today, none of those guys are there. TDG says, no way they take Bain. They just played John Franklin Myers. That may be true. But I think if the 2 edges are gone, That leaves them with Bain, and then they'd have to play Bain out of position, similarly to what the Patriots did with Will Campbell, which is he looks like a tackle. He played tackle in college. He's not built like a tackle, but we'll just say he's our tackle. And I think that's what they'll do when it comes to Rueben Bain. Corey Curtis texted me and said the Titans should trade Spears if they can get anything for him. Let me tell you what is on the very end of my thought process in terms of rebuilding this team right now. Trading Tajay Spears. And it's not because I think Tajay Spears is part of the solution. I don't think Spears moves the needle either way. I don't think you'll get anything good for him. And I don't think Spears is an impact player. I think he's a good third down running back, which Rand Carthon took in the third round. But hey, it is what it is. One person said, but last year you said this was the year to draft a quarterback. Well, I think Fernando Mendoza is a better quarterback than Cam Ward. And if you had the Giants pick and you had your pick, chances are you probably would be picking number one as well. And you'd be able to get him and get one of these players. But that's all water under the bridge. Plus, not only that, I didn't want to pick a quarterback this year. I wanted Sam Darnold, who just won the Super Bowl. And we'll end it on that. See everybody tomorrow live right here, 2 o'clock.